let's finish up this scatter plot by adding a reference line at 45 degrees. This visualization explores how any given name's social security cards are split between female and male occurrences. The closer a name's mark is to a given axis, the more exclusively that name is used by a single sex. The further a name drifts away from a single axis, the more evenly it's split between the sexes. A name with exactly the same number of female and male social security cards would sit at 45 degrees within this visualization's area of 90 degrees. So what we're trying to do here is add a 45 degrees reference line so that we can easily see how evenly or unevenly the social security cards are split. Now, under the Analytics tab, Tableau does have reference lines, but all of these are going to be either horizontal or vertical lines. We don't have an angled option. So here's what we'll do. Drag the male occurrences variable 2 columns and set it to the right of the female occurrences variable. And there's a beautiful 45-degree line. So what's happened here? Remember that we said a name with exactly the same number of female and male social security cards would sit directly at 45 degrees. Its x and y coordinates would be identical. Look at the second scatter plot Tableau has created. Its x-axis is the male occurrences instead of the female occurrences, but it's sharing the y-axis with the first scatter plot. And that y-axis is the male occurrences as well. This setup means that each name's mark in the second scatter plot uses the male occurrences variable for both its x and its y coordinates, which makes each mark sit exactly at 45 degrees. All right, we are well on our way here. There are 3 things we want to change about this second scatter plot before we move on. First, we want to change these circles into a line. Then we want it to sit on top of the first scatter plot. And finally, we want to change the tooltip so that it's a little bit more helpful for our end users to know what the reference line actually is. Okay, let's change the marks first. Take a look at what happened to your marks card when you added this second male occurrences variable to the columns shelf. Suddenly, your marks card has 3 sections. We'll adjust the color of each to understand how they're working. The first marks card says all. It will affect both scatter plots. The second marks card is titled with the female occurrences variable, and it just affects the first scatter plot. And finally, the last marks card is titled with the male occurrences variable and adjusts only the second scatter plot. In other words, if you want to affect everything in your viz, go to the all marks card. And if you want to adjust just a specific graph independently, use the individualized marks card. So to change our second scatter plot's marks from circles to lines, we'll go to the male occurrences marks card. Click the Mark Type drop-down menu and select Line. Since we want this to be a reference line, we'll adjust the size to make it super thin and change the color to a light gray that matches the grid of the lines the visualization already has. Great. Now let's stack our reference line on top of our scatter plot. All we have to do is tell Tableau we want to create a dual axis chart by right-clicking on the reference line's x-axis and selecting dual axis. Notice that the 2 pills on the column shelf now share a middle line. And this next step is super important. Don't forget it. Notice that the new top and bottom x-axes are slightly off. We want them to be identical. So right-click on the reference line's axis again and select Synchronize Axis. Excellent. There's that perfect 45-degree angle again. Now, when we created our dual axis chart, Tableau messed with our marks card. It wanted us to be able to tell the difference between the 2 charts, and so it added measure names to color on the all marks card. When we pull that off, the previous settings that we adjusted reappear. All right, last tweak, let's change our tooltips. We'll make sure we're on the line marks card and open up the tooltip editor. We'll delete everything there and add a little note that explains, first, this is a reference line set to 45 degrees, and second, that the names that are closer to this line are more evenly split between male and female social security cards. Helpful hints like this can give your end user an easy foothold into your visualization. Let's change our circles back to a dark gray and then hide our reference line's header. And finally, we'll get rid of these extra dividers around the x-axis title by right-clicking, selecting Format, then Columns, Borders, and turning that column divider under Header to None. Well done! You've just finished up the most complicated part of Dashboard 4. Now that our scatter plot is all ready to go, let's move on to Step 5 and our simple line chart.